Hi, welcome back to my channel. This is Nat. In case you're new here, I mostly review non-fiction books, but lately I've been getting to fiction as well. I try my best to read books from Singapore as well as the region. And if you're a returning subscriber, thanks so much for joining me today. Today is gonna be my February wrap up. Unfortunately, this month wasn't a great reading month. I only really managed to finish 3 whole books, but sort of dipping my toes into a few other books in the meantime. But hopefully I get to finish them up in March, and then I get to do a much longer wrap up. I realized, like, looking back, I did read a lot more in January, but yeah, like, things have been sort of moving around really quickly, so I haven't been able to read as much as I wanted to. Some really interesting books that I've read this month, so let's get into it. First book that I read was Disability Visibility. I think it's edited by Alice Wong. The whole book is a collection of essays that are written by people, first person perspective. I think that's what is emphasized in this collection, of people who identify differently on the spectrum of ableness. I think what the book does really well is to have a diverse range of perspectives being represented. So surprisingly, I think there were essays that kind of interweaved identities of queerness and in color and all of that, which I wasn't really expecting that much overlap. So that kind of made me reflect on what my understanding of intersectionality really is, and this book was really a really good example of what that can look like, what intersectional kind of activism can look like, and I think I learned a lot. I think it was a very humbling experience to learn from the different people who wrote about their experiences in this book, as to how they perceive time, how they perceive bodies, and there's a slight kind of radical aspect to it, in sense of, like, from a disabled person's point of view, how we typically kind of perceive bodies and time and space and materialness, like materiality, that is all disrupted by nature of having a different set of abilities, different set of ableness, and that really kind of made a huge impact on me, especially the idea of crib time, in which as someone who might have to grapple with issues that are normally associated with aging, but having to grapple with them at different stages of life, and to have this linear timeline being disrupted over and over again, it actually kind of shows how resilient relationships and people can be, like how strong and how resilient communities can bounce back together. I think I went into the book kind of hoping to gain a deeper understanding of first person perspectives, from the community that identify as disabled, but I think I came out of it with a whole range of really exciting and new perspectives towards activism, and I think that was a really good book that I enjoyed truly. It also made me realize how much of my own identity of ableness, my own abled self, how much I have not really interrogated that, and how much I have not really interrogated what accessibility means, what my body actually really kind of how it fits into society. I think I've been thinking a lot about that because of this book. So it was a really good book to start the month. Afterwards, I did go into How to Do Nothing, Resisting the Attention Economy by Jenny Odell. If you want to see like a vlog that I did while reading it, you can. I actually did a reading vlog about it about a week or two back, and it was a really good book. I know that some people tag it as a self-help. I don't think it's a self-help at all. I think the title is very misleading. I went into it knowing that it isn't self-help. I went into it knowing that it was more of a political and philosophical inquiry into what it meant to resist the current state of the economy right now. So of course, I think I went in with kind of the appropriate expectations, and I came out with sort of the appropriate outcomes, and I truly enjoyed the book in the way that it's so relevant right now. I think there are a lot of self-help, and there's a lot of books, non-fiction books that are written about this topic, written about the attention economy, but written in a very dry way, written in a very non-personal way, and also written in a way that does not tie in ideas of like political solidarity, or about the environment, or about community building. I think this is the first book that I've read that really tied all these concepts together, tying the concept of the kind of hype of productivity, the kind of overconsumption from social media, how that can tie into kind of not reverting back, but dedicating more time and energy and attention towards nature, towards more sort of organic community building. This book is really the first book that I've read that kind of made a more convincing relation between all these aspects, and especially about environmentalism. I think that was the biggest takeaway for me in this book, because it helped me tie some of these loose threads I had about the tech and about the digital, how that tied to my ongoing thread about the environment and climate change and nature. So this really helped plug the gap, I guess, in that sense. I've read some reviews that said that the book was not super accessible, and I can see why. The writing is not really meant, it's not really a surface level writing. It's not meant to be a easy solution to things. I think it's definitely more of a cultural commentary, but also a political one. It is really a right up my alley intersection of art, about politics, about culture, and about digital tech, all those things. If you're interested in all those things, then I think this book might be of interest to you. I realized that the books I read this month really made me think a lot. Maybe that's why I didn't read that many books this month. I was really trying to take my time to process my thoughts on each and every book that I've read. So the next book that I read is, I actually still have the physical copy here. It's called Trick Mirror by Tolentino, Reflections of Self-Delusion. Unfortunately, I did not enjoy the book as much as I thought it would, and as much as I thought I would. I think this book was really, really hyped up, and to the point where the local libraries here in Singapore are actually promoting it on their like reading campaigns. I think the thing that I couldn't really get was that I think Tolentino's writing was very, very confusing for me. I think comparing this, and I would say that if you're the reader profile for the first two books that I've read, would be kind of likely to enjoy this book as well. I mean, it all kind of falls into the same category of non-fiction that is contemporary, that is a bit more targeted towards a younger, like, intellectual crowd rather than like leisure or entertainment reading. This should have been a book that followed that trajectory, but unfortunately I felt that Tolentino's writing was just really confusing. I think I was in huge doubt. I was kind of doubting myself, like, was I not getting anything? Was I reading this book wrong? I would say the first 2 or 3 essays were fine. Really, really good observations, but I had this analogy in my mind. I was just like, some of her writing, it's meant to be clarifying because it's about self-delusion, and she takes writing as a form of clarification for herself. So this book was the process of her clarifying her own thoughts, and maybe that's why some of it sounds a bit muddled. But what I felt was that, like, it's like, if you're clarifying something, does that clarification actually make a difference? I feel like the objects that she's trying to clarify, she made it clearer in some senses, but I don't think I was convinced that those objects that she was clarifying was important for me to understand in high definition. I felt kind of bad to say negative things about the book, but I do see the intentions of the book, and I do see how it might resonate with audiences who are a lot more closer to her demographic. Maybe people in the US who have grown up as Asian American, people who might have gone through the same kind of mega church settings and the same kind of interactions with street culture and drugs and yeah, I don't know, but it just didn't make sense to me at all. And now going on to like my 4.5 book, this is a collection of short stories called This Is How You Walk on the Moon, edited by Patricia Karunungan, Samuel Caleb Wee, and Wong Wen Pu. I had this book since last year and I never really picked it up. Yeah, I'm not really a huge fiction reader, so I find it very hard to pick up a fiction book. Lately, I've been reading a lot more fiction this year, and I think it's doing wonders for the way that I approach books and the way that I see the world. So this is how they described it was a collection of anti-realist fiction, and I absolutely love it. I'm only like, you know, maybe like 10 stories in, but I wanted to include this in this wrap up because I know that I'm not really the type to finish an entire collection of short stories in one go. I also don't think that there's always a linear way to consume books. So in this sense, I will be taking my time to complete the stories as and when I feel like it. But I really enjoy it so far. I still feel like local literature really hits a spot that, you know, other books cannot, and that's in kind of reinterpreting local cultural signifiers, things like that, and co-opting kind of local language, and, you know, legitimizing it. I think that's the thing that really made it for me. Some of these stories are like, they are super creative, and that made me feel like, wow, it's so crazy that people can come up with these ideas and then write them out, and then you're like stunned by the story for a few good days. I think there's a story in here that I really liked that was about a runaway ostrich, and how the ostrich was captured, but the way that the story was written was as though it was completely a real event, and how the writing also included figures for reference. And I just love this because it's kind of like creative non-fiction, but it's entirely fictional, and I just really enjoy it when people blur the lines between non-fiction and fiction, because in the end it's just writing, and no matter what you write, it is a kind of fiction writing. You are always creating narratives about your life, even if it's in real life. So I really enjoyed the stories here so far, and I think that's about it for my wrap up this month. I realized I talked so much about the books I read. As I mentioned, it's really because I felt like the books were a bit heavier to process this month, so I did kind of read like one book a week, which I think is pretty normal. I think that's kind of manageable. I don't want to breeze through the books just because I have to. Anyway, so let me know what you think about the books. I think there were really some good and low, like some really highs and lows that I felt in this month, but for March, I am definitely reading a lot more local lit, a lot more singlet. I'm definitely reading I guess like shorter length books as well. I'm trying to be a lot more intentional about reading from the region, so that will be a lot of fun stuff in March. So yeah, thanks so much for joining me for this video, and let me know what you think about the books and what you think about my take on the books. Honestly, yes. So until the next video, I hope that you all stay safe and enjoy your time, take a break, and have a lovely rest if you haven't taken a break already. So thanks so much, and see you in the next video.